Namaskar, I am Tanmay and welcome to Sanchyeeta. I hope you are doing well. In this video, you can learn to take dictation of the editorial passage. Today's passage is an editorial passage of the Hindu. Speed will be 100 words per minute. Total words 1107. As you know, readback and transcription is the two main important factors of stenography. By doing these two, you can improve your speed and accuracy in stenography. So, after completion of this video, you should try to read your script and do transcription. At the same time, knowing outlines and meanings of some important or tough words will help you a lot to get speed and accuracy in stenography. For that, after the dictation, you will have meanings, outlines of some important words and the full passage. Now, be ready. I will start my dictation after the countdown of 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, start. An internal working group of the Reserve Bank of India within bracket RBI bracket close has recommended that corporate houses be given bank licenses. In today's pro-business climate, you would have thought the proposal would evoke jubilation. It should have been held as another within single quote big band decode reform that would help undo the dominance of the public sector in banking. Instead, the reaction has ranged from cautious welcome to scathing criticism. Many analysts doubt the proposal will fly. It is worth examining why. The idea of allowing corporate houses into banking is by no means novel. In February 2013, the RBI had issued guidelines that permitted corporate and industrial houses to apply for a banking license. Some houses applied, although a few withdrew their applications subsequently. No corporate was ultimately given a bank license. Only two entities qualified for a license: IDFC and Bandhan Financial Services. The RBI maintained that it was open to letting in corporates. However, none of the applicants had met within single quote fit and proper decode criteria. The IWG report quotes the official RBI position on the subject at the time, within double quote, at a time when there is public concern about governance and when it comes licenses for entities that are intimately trusted by the Indian public has within bracket not giving a license to any corporate house bracket close may well be the most appropriate stance decode. In 2014, the RBI restored the long-standing prohibition on the entry of corporate houses into banking. The RBI governor then was Raghuram G. Rajan. Mr. Rajan had headed the Committee on Financial Sector Reforms within bracket 2008 bracket close. The committee had set its face against the entry of corporate houses into banking. It had observed within double quote, the committee also believes it is premature to allow industrial houses to own banks. This prohibition on the within single quote banking and commerce decode combined still exists in the United States today and is certainly necessary in India till private governance and regulatory capacity improve. The RBI's position on the subject has remained unchanged since 2014. Decode. What would be the rationale for any reversal in the position now? The internal working group report weighs the pros and cons of letting in corporate houses. Corporate houses will bring capital and expertise to banking. Moreover, not many jurisdictions worldwide bar corporate houses from banking. It is the downside risks that are worrying in the extreme. As the report notes, the main concerns are interconnected lending, concentration of economic power, and exposure of the safety net provided to banks within bracket through guarantee of deposits bracket close to commercial sectors of the economy. It is worth elaborating on these risks. Corporate houses can easily turn banks into a source of funds for their own businesses. In addition, they can ensure that funds are directed to their cronies. They can use banks to provide finance to customers and suppliers of their businesses. Adding a bank to a corporate house thus means an increase in concentration of economic power. Just as politicians have used banks to further their political interests, so also will corporate houses be tempted to use banks set up by them to enhance their clout. Not least, banks owned by corporate houses will be exposed to the risks of the non bank entities of the group. If the non bank entities get into trouble, sentiment about the bank owned by the corporate house is bound to be impacted. Depositors may have to be rescued through the use of the public safety net. The internal working group believes that before corporate houses are allowed to enter banking, the RBI must be equipped with a legal framework to deal with interconnected lending and a mechanism to effectively supervise conglomerates that venture into banking. It is naive to suppose that any legal framework and supervisory mechanism will be adequate to deal with the risk of interconnected lending in the Indian context. Corporate houses are adept at routine funds through a maze of entities in India and abroad. Tracing interconnected lending will be a challenge. Monitoring of transactions of corporate houses will require the cooperation of various law enforcement agencies. Corporate houses can use their political clout to thwart such cooperation. Second, the RBI can only react to interconnected lending ex post, that is, after substantial exposure to the entities of the corporate house has happened. It is unlikely to be able to prevent such exposure. Third, suppose the RBI does latch on the interconnected lending, how is the RBI to react? Any reaction that the RBI may take in response could cause a flight of deposits from the bank concerned and participate its failure. The challenges posed by interconnected lending are truly formidable. Fourth, pitting the regulator against powerful corporate houses could end up damaging the regulator. The regulator would be under enormous pressure to compromise on regulation. Its credibility would be dented in the process. This would indeed be a tragedy given the stature the RBI enjoys today. What we have discussed so far is the entry of corporate houses that do not have interest in the financial sector. There are corporate houses that are already present in banking related activities through ownership of non banking financial companies within bracket NBFCs bracket close. Under the present policy, NBFCs with a successful track record of 10 years are allowed to convert themselves into banks. The internal working group believes that NBFCs owned by corporate houses should be eligible for such conversion. This promise to be an easier route for the entry of corporate houses into banking. The internal working group argues that corporate owned NBFCs have been regulated for a while. The RBI understands them well. Hence, some of the concerns regarding the entry of these corporates into banking may get mitigated. This is being disingenuous. There is a world of difference between a corporate house owing an NBFC and one owing a bank. Bank ownership provides access to a public safety net, whereas NBFC ownership does not. The reach and clout that bank ownership provides are vastly superior to that of an NBFC. The objections that apply to a corporate house with no presence in bank like activities are equally applicable to corporate houses that own NBFCs. There is another aspect to the proposal that cannot be ignored. Corporate houses are unlikely to be enthused merely by the idea of growing a bank on their own. The real attraction will be the possibility of acquiring public sector banks whose valuations have been battered in recent years. Public sector banks need capital that the government is unable to provide. The entry of corporate houses, if it happens at all, is thus likely to be a prelude to privatization. Given what we know of governance in the Indian corporate world, any sale of public sector banks to corporate houses would raise serious concerns about financial stability. Stop writing. Now you should try to read and do transcription. Now I am showing you some important words meaning. This is part 1. This is part 2. And this is the final part. As you see, these words are very important. So write down these words meaning. It will help you in your written examination also. Now I am showing you some important words outline. This is part 1. This is part 2. Now I am showing you the full passage. This is part 1. This is part 2. This is part 3. This is part 4. and this is the final part. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you find my work helpful to you. Please take care. Bye.